you and open up the stage, so to speak, for our getting through the holidays. And I should have put hours straight, so my mental capacity is a little low. Okay, I want you guys to welcome Jeff Casper, an energy healer, etheric surgeon, and also a energy coach like myself. And I'm going to try, okay, to bring him in here into my screen. Give me a moment. I need to call him for that. And then, Jeff, please turn on your video.
Hey.
Okay, let's see if this works out. First attempt. Okay, yes. Okay. Welcome, Jeff Casper, to our first day of getting through the holidays here from transCODES. Jeff,
yes.
Let us know, what is your expertise? What do you do, and how come I have invited you here to helping people with reflecting about current energies, and perhaps even giving them tips? What do you do, and how do you see, the most recent days here, how the energies are building and how people are dealing with this?
Okay, that's a lot. First, like you said, I'm an energy coach, I'm an energy clearer, and I'm also a trans coach. I work with transCODES, and my specialty is kind of digging through what is in the way of the heart. So when you have a session with me, a lot of times it is geared towards finding those blocks, finding the limitations that are stopping a person or their energy from expanding. And it can be very helpful to have that kind of work done, because then you kind of got a roadmap, because a lot of times what's in the way is the roadmap to how we get to our heart. So that's kind of in a nutshell what I do. And of course, I'm also a coach, so I help to people reframe things and work through processes. So when they have a session and this list comes up and all these things are there, I help them to reframe that so it's not so daunting or feels like you're so limited or you're so stuck. It can be really powerful. As far as like last night's session, or just in general for the last few weeks or the holiday season for the energies?
These winter solstice energies that we're dealing with right now. I explained them here before you came on.
Yeah.
So not necessarily sessions. People don't know what sessions we do unless they participate. So more so what you observe in general, and what people's challenges are right now, and what you would recommend for people how to deal with it.
Well, I think the challenges right now, it's a couple things. One, it's about, we're heading into the winter solstice, is going into winter, so it's about letting go. Winter is the time to let go of the old, to go a little bit within, to really feel out what we want to do for the next season or the next round of seasons next year. It's also dealing with holidays, which can be beautiful and challenging at the same time, because you're dealing with communicating with loved ones, family members, which can be awesome or not so awesome. You're dealing with lots of travel a lot of times. There's stress. There's, of course, if you're involved in Christmas, there's lots of stress around money and buying things and so forth. So a lot of times it can be a lot of up and down. But to me, the solstice time frame is a chance to kind of let go. You've gotten through the year. It's time to be thankful for everything that happened, to really see a beauty in what's occurred, and then go within to really be able to kind of relax a bit. That doesn't mean you have to quit your job or anything like that, but you begin to kind of pull back in and you really feel out, what do I want to do for the next year? What do I want to do for the next round of seasons? And it's an opportunity to really kind of double check and release. Of course, now with commercialism and all the kind of stuff and all the travel and with family, that can be challenging. So one of the biggest tips, I think, a lot of times for this time of year, at least for myself, when a lot of family stuff happens or whatever, is to really remind myself, stay centered. There's lots of stress this time of year. Mm-hmm. It's not all bad by any means, but it's...
Yeah, I talked about this, the centeredness and the consolidation is really all we can do, really, is to learn how to do this for ourselves. But you mentioned family, for instance, as an example, and there were questions here in the chat. In regards to like betrayal and family. I talked about this here before you came on. A little bit.
I get a part of it, yeah.
So what do you recommend someone, who feels under, like, say, maybe severe attack of their own family, Okay. What do you do? I mean, you can't just let them go, you know? I mean, sometimes you have to, but this is,
Right.
like, how do you deal with this? What is your experience? Not necessarily,
Oh, I know that one.
your professional experience in how to deal with things like this when you are forced to go into these family functions and you witness all this sort of gossiping and talking about other people. What do you recommend people how to deal with this so that they don't get pulled into this incongruence and this non-integrous type of stuff?
Yeah, but the challenge is, again, besides being centered, you have to kind of catch yourself. You have to see what's happening. You can't always. There's no way you can control anybody else. And again, with family, because I mean, I'm sure you talked about this. Now I got a chance to listen to part of it. It can get really intense because they know your buttons. There's multiple patterns involved, and you can be on guard just walking in there because you're worried about, oh, this person's going to say that, or my mom's going to do this, or my dad's going to do that, and then they're going to judge me, or whatever, or I'm going to judge other people. It can be all kinds of stuff. The challenge, really, all you can do is keep your side of the fence clean, period. Is try to stay calm, try to stay neutral. If you feel yourself getting pulled in, take a moment, go outside.
Okay, let's be a bit more specific. Okay,
sure.
You find out that you enter a room and you find out they've just like gossiped about you, badmouthed you, or whatever, and it's this awkward energy when you come in and you can feel what's going on, and it triggers sort of like maybe your deepest core wound, namely that of betrayal or that of abandonment, or being unfairly judged. Okay, how do you deal with this in that moment? What do you do?
If that happens right then and there, you can do a couple things. The first one I would do is I would state that this is not okay for me. That what you just did or what was just said is not okay. I don't appreciate that. You don't have to go anything past that. Just to stay calm, stand your ground, and be neutral. Just state your view that this is not okay. What you just said was kind of rude. You can be honest without going into attack.
But what if the others go into attack? I mean, this is also a typical relationship situation, where one will speak up and say, I really don't appreciate that. Or I really don't like that when you do that. And when the other person then immediately becomes defensive or attacks. What can you do as an energetically sensitive, as an empath, to not say lose it in those moments, okay? And to not absorb too much either, as we know. Yeah.
Yeah, the challenge a lot of times is, can you get out of the situation, or can you, mediate it without, feeling like you get ran over by a truck, energetically. And the challenge when you've got people who don't want to stop playing that game of judging or ego stuff or whatever, and you stand your ground and say, I'm kind of done with this. If they start going into it more and more, it's just, you literally have to say, look, this isn't going to get us anywhere. There's no point in going any further with this. And if they want to keep doing that. Now, personally, what I would do if I said those things, I would just say, okay, this is no good for me to be here. I would go find someplace else to go. Now, if that's the entire family against me, I wouldn't go in the first place. That's my personality. Why would I?
So there's a fine line between avoiding and dodging.
Yes.
That's what I hear you say. So there's situations, of course, that we...
Well, you're not dodging, really. You're standing your ground where you're not going to go.
Okay.
Avoiding would be related to fear. Dodging would be typically a coping mechanism. You're just going. There's no point in going into an attack. If a person's got their personality, like if I go to a family member who is constantly berating me, and I told them to stop many, many times, and there's no point, they keep doing it, then what am I doing talking to them in the first place?
Right.
That's their personality. That's their choice. I don't like it, but there's no point to go there.
Yeah.
If they do show up and start doing that, you can stand your ground again. If they keep doing it, then if it's your place, you tell them to go. If it's not your place, you just go somewhere else. You keep it calm.
I want to remind everyone here now that this is your time to ask questions directly to Jeff or me or both of us. This is us exchanging. Energy tips. So please ask questions here in the chat function. And while you're sort of thinking about what you want to ask, Jeff, how does this play out in the energy system of a person, sort of on that code level, all right, that we work on. How do you, as an energy clearer or etheric surgeon, as many people call it, how do you see this when people are unable to resolve this? How does this, not visually how you see this, but how does this play out for a person, and what do they need to work on in general if they cannot stay in that centered place in interaction with other people?
You mean, what do they need to work on after they realize they can't get out of it? Okay. Well, there's a lot of patterns and programs you're talking about there, but typically when you feel a pattern or program, let's say it's pleasing or getting angry or whatever, and you realize there's an issue there, a lot of times what happens is it throws off your energy. The visual aspect, you begin to see loops in people's energy. They bounce, they jump, skip, and go all over the place, and they don't really have a good flow of energy. So a lot of times what has to happen is whatever the program is, once you've identified it, like, okay, I please, or my coping mechanism is to withdraw, is to avoid, then you begin to see what it is. Typically, most patterns have one or two things. They either have a payoff that your ego gets, or you're avoiding something. There's an avoidance mechanism.
Right.
Yeah. So a lot of times what has to happen is you begin to dig into those things, is you have to, and you can't necessarily do this in the moment if you're at,
Right. But we talk, I mean, what happens when people avoid? What happens with their energy field?
Oh, okay. Essentially the question. Usually it gets stuck somewhere. Energetically, they get stuck usually in the lower chakras, or they get too mental and start to judge themselves, or judge the situation, or judge other people. So what begins to happen typically is either their flow of their energy starts to get a little bit clogged, either through the lower chakras, or they begin to have patterns where energy jumps from the second or third chakra to the fifth or the sixth, or they begin to have physical sensations like head pressures, tight throat, stomach extended or like bloated or really tight. You can even have digestive issues, sometimes even slight chest pain. Those are all signs that things aren't flowing properly.
And if this happens, if they do this, like if they suck up these things over extended periods of times, maybe years or all their lives, how can this, not to scare anyone, but since we have you here, how can this play out in a person's energy field on the long run? I mean, you see all these things every day, and help people with guidance as to how to overcome these things. But how does that, how can a certain physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual and energetic things, how can they indicate that, where does this play out?
Well, it can play out in a multitude of areas, depending upon what the issue is. But, let's say you have something with performance-based issues, which is typically second chakra. It can also go into third and upper chakras, but a lot of times it gets tied to the second. You can have all kinds of bowel issues. You can have digestion issues. You can have issues with the ovaries, issues with the testicles, everything. There's all kinds of stuff that can happen depending upon what you're holding on to. If you're holding on to disdain and anger and all this kind of stuff, it can really begin to affect your body. Holding on to anger for a long time and eating it can also show up as depression. You can also become lethargic, not wanting to really do anything. That's something
a lot of people are dealing with right now.
Yeah, big thing issue. It's a big time issue.
Anxiety, is it anxiety and depression,
Yeah, it's the time of year for it. It's the stress. And a lot of times people who are depressed, they eat things. They eat their emotions over and over again, and they don't let it out. And then all of a sudden they get an overload. And a lot of times you'll feel this early on, and I know this one very well personally. You feel it almost like you're tight all the time, like your third chakra and your lower chakras and all this stuff. You just feel tense. You feel like you're constantly on guard. And then eventually you get into just kind of lethargic, apathetic states where you just don't care anymore. You've given up, and what really needs to happen is you need to let that stuff out. Maybe not during the Christmas party.
Well, that's exactly the question, right? I mean, if you don't want to suck it up, and you can't face it, okay, let's say because, for whatever reason, okay, the situation does not allow you to actually resolve it.
Right.
What do? What can you do? So to avoid, severe sort of, let's say, damage, on your energy system.
Right. Well, I mean, we've already talked about what you can do in the situation, but energetically, what you can do, or are you asking which way? More of the physical or more of the energetic?
Either way.
Either way.
Practical.
Energetically, besides centering, you can also, centering your energy, grounding works exceptionally well for those situations. Taking a break before it gets too intense. If you're dealing with a situation that's not damaging to the point where you need to leave permanently, taking a break helps. So you can recenter yourself so you don't get into this repetitive attack or absorption cycle. That can really help out. You take a break, breathe, you go out, do what you need to do to recenter yourself. You feel out what's going on with yourself. You acknowledge, I'm angry, I'm had it with this stuff, whatever it is. And then you breathe it back in. If you can breathe it into the heart, I know you talk a lot about, and the transCODES site talks about I am breathing. That's very effective because it brings it into the heart. It's a form of surrendering because you're not going to have an answer to it necessarily right away. If you've had a long-standing pattern for 25 years with Uncle Bob or your mother or whoever, it's not likely going to resolve. What's really going to have to happen is you're going to have to realize there's a game that's being played there for a really long time, and you're going to put the ball down. You say, I'm not playing this game anymore. And that sometimes means you don't talk to Uncle Bob for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about, I was trying to feel myself into this situation, and I've been in this situation myself many times.
Yeah.
I personally find it very helpful, like you said, to take a time out, to say, wait a minute, before I react, before I do anything that I may regret later, that violates my own values, maybe. Let me just sort of take a time out and a little more space so that I can calm down a little bit and then respond instead of react. Okay, this is something in energy coaching we've had with every person almost this week is the responsibility versus reactivity. Okay, the fire portal outer is our reactivity, the reacting to the drama. But the responsible, the mature part in us is the one that can, regardless of whether or not it's true or who to blame, it doesn't matter. Whatever triggered it, whatever caused it, it doesn't really matter. But that we are in this place of being able to respond, where we can come from the heart and where we don't just sort of react. What does this look like, Jeff? When somebody is caught in their reactivity energetically, what does that look like?
Well, there's a lot of options that happen there. Like if a person goes into victim or hiding, typically their energy pulls back in and it collapses. If they go into anger, it usually turns, well, I see it as red. Many times people see it different ways. It gets really aggressive and starts to get very attached or very attacking, projecting outwards to the person. What happens typically when you've got some type of projecting pattern, especially aggressive ones like severe anger, where you're really in an attack mode, you're literally feeling out who's going to react and you're going to go attack them. Or if you know the person that you're usually mad at, you're going to go at them. You're waiting for that response. The attacker wants that response. He either wants to see somebody either attack back or see a person collapse, them to go weak. So it energetically, you'll start to see them lashing out. Okay. In their systems, a lot of times what happens, they get stuck. They don't have a good flow. You'll see them skip a lot of their fourth chakra a lot of times, sometimes even their fifth, because they're just going reactivity. Or what happens when they go into those states energetically, what comes out, and if you go colors, a lot of times you see black and reds, it's aggressive. Okay. Other times you'll see some other colors like greens, certain types of yellows. But what really happens is that their system either collapses or goes really rigid. Okay. Really rigid.
And what happens when a person's energy field goes rigid? What happens to when a person's energy field goes rigid? What happens to their etheric immune system, so to speak?
Shuts down completely. You're basically saying, I'm going to go full bore into this, and basically you're shutting down all potentials for staying calm. Relaxing, allowing that more of the healthier systems, which is based more on, oxytocin and the forebrain as opposed to the mind brain or the midbrain and the hindbrain. You're going more into the animalistic reptilian attack centers. And that creates a stress system that's based on reactivity. So
basically, what you were saying, in a nutshell, is that people have to release energies, but that they also have to look into the context, into the constellation of things.
Yes.
And then it's venting energies for the sake of clearing your own energies is very important, but sometimes it would, and I'm just paraphrasing here, it would just put fuel into the fire. So you got to find out what the most mature and responsible, and also, in context with the overall situation, what
Yes.
the most responsible type of thing is. We all have abilities to clear things out through energy work techniques, and you mentioned a few here. You mentioned grounding, you mentioned centering. I talked about consolidating energy.
Yes.
So those are all, like, we just sort of throw these words out, but these are like really big things that can change a person's life. Can you give us here real quick before you go, get an example or something like a process for grounding energies? I mean, next week we're going to be dealing with massive first chakra, fifth chakra, and fourth chakra. So fourth and fifth chakra into the first issue. So grounding will be one of probably the best quick fixes for us energetically. Can you give us a little bit of a tip here how to do grounding?
Yes, if you've got the time and it's not like super freezing cold outside, finding a good tree that's in a quiet place, you can sit with your back to the tree. I'll give you two quick ones. So sitting into the back of the tree, you just kind of settle into it and you begin to focus on your breathing through your chest, and just relax a bit and then really feel that tree. And then depending upon your sensitivity, you can just visualize, or you can actually feel as you breathe in, as you breathe in, pulling all the energy up from the ground, from the roots of the tree, all the way up into your fourth chakra, which is dead center chest. And then as you breathe out, breathing your energy down all the way as far down as you can into the ground, and creating kind of a loop there. As you keep doing that, what happens is not only connecting with the tree, but you're also connecting with the earth. And that's a very effective and strong method of releasing energies and kind of getting recentered really quickly. So again, it's just breathing everything up into the chest and pulling up from as deep as you can up into your heart. And as you breathe out, shooting the energy back down to as deep as you can and creating a circuit. And that really, two things it does. One, it connects you to the ground. Two, it also helps you clear out emotions and that reactivity, because it helps to loosen up the lower chakras. That one you can take 5 or 10 minutes with. If you're a little bit practiced in clearing, you can just do this in the moment. I've done this many times where, and in situations like we're talking about, because the holidays is really stressful. It can be very beautiful too, but it can be really stressful. Is you can just be wherever you're at, know that you are connected to the ground. And you can literally do the same breathing process, but visualize like roots or your feet going deep as you can into the ground. Okay. Deep as you can as you breathe out, and as you breathe back in, pulling that all the way up to your fourth chakra and creating that cycle. You can literally do this while you're talking to people. You may get a bit dippy, but it does work. I've done this myself many times.
By the way, here's a question. George is asking, skipping fourth and fifth chakra, is that mentalizing? Typically. It's interesting that you see it that way, George. It's actually really cool that you this question, because most people. Sorry, Jeff. I just want to add here to the energetic dynamics for this week. Most people, and we talked about this 2 weeks ago, I think. When things get a little tougher in regards to the larger perspective and sort of connecting with those higher vibratory concepts. They immediately sort of go into opening up, everything up here, they're striving for enlightenment, ascension, and so forth. And also use this as a coping mechanism for dealing with their reality by creating some kind of alternate reality, with some kind of fantasizing. All right, so there is there's a desire that comes in, and sort of the physical reality doesn't match up, and then there is sort of our higher vibratory abilities that can connect us with some of these other realms. And yes, we're bypassing this part here, right? And this part is we talked about this last week. is our connection with our center. So if the connection with the center is not there, we're basically off on a blind spot. It's not just mentalizing. It can also be fantasizing, or it can also be suppressing. But
it can also be judgment-based, where all of a sudden some little snippet of your critical inner voice or judgment comes in, and then bam, you're locked in that judgment. So then all your lower chakras begin to react to that judgment. Or an emotion comes in and the judgment gets triggered. Now you're stuck in that, and you're skipping, like Jona said, you're skipping these center spots where you can be really connected. You see this a lot with people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or sensitive. It's crazy how it shuts down, because now all of a sudden when a person's in this, like when we work with people or you're doing a clearing session, you'll literally see them skip most of their energy. Yeah. And it literally, you can see what happens with that is when you have a judgment hit, it's usually around the head, or sometimes off to the left if it's critical in their voice. It literally just shuts everything down. You can see the perception of the person completely become skewed or cramped or more so blocked. Mm-hmm. So by working through the judgments and the attachments to those, like we talked about earlier with ego, payoffs, and avoidance, then the judgment gets released, some of those patterns release, and you have a better chance to connect.
Yeah, and Jeff, you bring in the judgment in because the judgment is usually linked here with the fifth chakra. So if we skip the fourth chakra, we are losing connection within, period. Okay, and that makes it difficult for us to feel our feelings, as stupid as that sounds, but to really be able to pinpoint how we feel. Yeah, you guys wouldn't believe how hard that can be sometimes when you are in this sort of false self or in this fire put or outer mode. You cannot feel your feelings anymore. And you've heard me say this many times. You can only heal what you can feel. So bypassing the heart connection is always sort of at the core of long-term issues for people.
Yeah, I agree.
When you did the grounding exercise or the grounding technique, actually I could feel this going on. The grounding itself, it actually felt for me as energetically sensitive, I could feel it in the people listening, which I thought was really cool.
Mm-hmm. It can really help, because if you have nothing else, I mean, getting away for just a minute, even a minute, and go and leaning against a tree, anything, just to give yourself a second, just to release, just to let go before you go into that reaction. Because once you go into the reaction, all those things we just talked about with the energetic loops and stuff begin to occur. And Jona nailed it. Once you're in those spots, you cannot, well, you do feel your feelings, but you feel them completely, you feel them much less, and usually you misunderstand them completely, or you justify them and you go full bore into them. That son of a whatever, I'm going to go yell at him again. Then you're stuck. So.
Yes, we've talked a lot about the subjectivity of perception and how distorted it can be once our ego is involved. And every time we are in reactivity, guys, that's when our ego is involved. And when our ego is involved, then you have to assume that your perception of whatever the situation is right now may not be neutral, may not be exactly the way it appears. Yeah. And for many of you who maybe in a relationship challenge right now, remember, if you both go into reactivity, that means both of you go into your blind spots, both of you go into these disconnected areas of yourself. How high do you think is the chance that you're going to resolve the issue at hand? 0. Yeah. You're going to play out a pattern that you have been playing out, and this will merely continue. So if you want change in your life, in your relationship, in your job, or whatever, then you need to know what the pattern is, and you need to stop yourself. You don't need to know the fix. You don't need to know how to resolve it at that moment. You just need to refrain from the old. That's what Jeff said in the beginning. You have to be willing to let go of the old. And that's the, in this first step here, something that I would recommend is to focus on just simply stopping your reactivity. You don't yet have to resolve big karmic family issues, okay? This is not the goal. You cannot control the outcome anyway. You know, when there's multiple people involved, and everybody has their own karma, everybody has their own intention, and also their own integrity levels. You cannot control that for others. You can't make them heal. That's not how this works. But what Jeff said, what you can do is keep your side of the fence clean or cleaner and not add to the fire. All right. And as soon as you stop adding to the fire, buying into the drama, grounding yourself, opting out, without avoiding, without, you know, like running off and I've had it. No, but by, you know, like, hey, I need a little bit of space. You know, I'm going to go outside and take a walk or something, or ground yourself. And then your whole entire interaction will become more mature. And that means that the overall energy level, the frequency level of that interaction begins to vibrate higher, vibrates in a higher vibratory state, which then will lead to you being able to come up with higher vibratory solutions. But first you have to create the right conditions for that. And it always starts with yourself. You cannot make others responsible for not doing it, okay? You're going to have to start with yourself and then hope that, you know, based on the love between you or some other common goal that you have, and or your integrity, that the other person will want to have that resolved as well. And then work on it together. Mutual exchange. All right, guys. Before we let Jeff off the hook here, any more questions?
Just one.
Any more questions in regards to energy clearing, etheric surgery, absorbing, or projecting energies? Anything that comes to your mind that you would like to ask Jeff here? Okay, you can find Jeff. He works for as an energy coach for transCODES as well, but also for his own website, which is called www.selfunification.com. And Jeff, if people want to do energy clearings, how can they do this, or what do they need to expect when they book a session with you? Just real brief. What is that like?
Well, right now I've got a couple specials, so I'll stick with those. But you go to my site, there's a shop, and you go to the energy sessions or energy coaching sessions. The main one I typically do is a remote session where the person, you'll get instructions from me once we set up a time. I get some basic information from you, and you go into a relaxed state, typically sitting down or lying down. And then once the session starts, I connect with the person's energy and begin to work through it. What I mean by that is I check everything. I check the main chakras. I check the system itself. I check sometimes physical stuff shows up. What I'm really searching for is, where is your energy not flowing properly? Where is your energy not allowing you to expand? And usually what shows up, and this is probably because of what, Jona and I work on, is that we work on, psychological patterns, spiritual patterns, emotional patterns, mental patterns, and I begin to feel those out. Part of the process is releasing and expanding and opening things up. Other part of the process is helping a person align to those centers. So typically what happens in a clearing session is you'll feel, if you don't fall asleep, usually you feel some expansive things come through you. You might feel some tension here and there for a bit. You might have very strong dreams. What's really happening is, as I go about that, I help to speed up your energy and align it more to your heart center. And then with the report that you get afterwards, and typically there's a coaching session as well, depending upon what you sign up with, we go ahead and talk about that. We talk about what happened, how did you feel, any crazy experiences that you had, and then questions you have about the report and how to help maybe reframe those things.
But all this happens remotely, right? It sounded like you have a practice and people lay down. This is not how this works, right? I mean, this is remotely, meaning that people from all over the world can sign up for this?
I apologize, yes. Yeah, it's remotely. I do have a newer one that's just, I've just put it on my site, but I haven't announced it heavily yet, where if a person's done a session with me and kind of understands energy work, we can do one live via Skype where I actually help clear your system and we talk through what comes up, what you're feeling and everything. But the majority of the sessions that I work on are remote. where the person is lying down, relaxed. I'm not there. I'm present only energetically.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. It's amazing what comes up in an hour. It really is, and as long as they know that what my work is not about, where all your strengths are at and, what your power animal is and all that, which is all fine, but it's more about what is in the way of you going further, what is in the way of you expanding and getting more into your heart, more into your spiritual journey. And
you also write a pretty comprehensive report, I think, with tips or kind of like a roadmap for the person where they need to work on or what they can do physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, or energetically to further support this.
Yes. Yeah, it's usually 3 or 4 pages.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, Jeff Casper from selfunification.com, thank you very much.
Thank you.
For joining in. I hope we all had a visual of you. I'm not entirely sure, but we'll see in the recording. This was our first day of getting through the holidays, guys. Every day at 7 p.m. U.S. Mountain Time, meaning tomorrow, the 22nd of December, 7 p.m. here live again. And tomorrow we'll start with channeling the energies for the coming year. I know I said that we were going to do January. We have not enough people watching live here. We need more audience to be able to do this. So please tell your friends, share, push the like button, all right? And make sure that we have enough people there so that we can actually begin to mutually work our energies together. One last question here. Does neurofeedback work? Yeah, I mean, depending on what you want to use it for. I've had the ability to test neurofeedback machines in the mid 80s, and they're pretty cool. It goes into the direction of kinesiology, muscle testing, so you can get good feedback from them. I don't really think that you need them, but there are some cool telephone apps nowadays that come with the sensor that are based on neurofeedback, very simple neurofeedback. For instance, heart rate that work really well for, say, helping a person to relax, helping a person to meditate. So yeah, it depends on what you need it for. There's many other ways to go into connection with your body. All right, neurofeedback is a physical connection, but it's one that has a psychological, therefore emotional impact on you. So I've talked about this in the past. If we want to have a positive learning, then we also need positive feedback. Okay. All right, that was our last question. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Jeff Casper. And looking forward to seeing you tomorrow, 7 p.m., same time. I mean, same place. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.